Rain fell softly over the narrow streets of a small barangay in Quezon province. Mud clung to worn slippers, and children darted through puddles, laughing as if the rain were a celebration rather than a nuisance. A young European man, Lucas, stood at the entrance of a tiny blue-painted school. His eyes, pale and wide, traced the cracked walls, the rusted iron gates, and the faded posters of national heroes. He had heard stories of poverty in the Philippines, and now, standing here, every stereotype he carried seemed to tighten around him like a noose. "Surely this is what poverty looks like," he muttered under his breath, his voice almost swallowed by the drizzle. Inside the schoolyard, a simple breakfast program was underway. Children shared rice and fish, some with hands, others with spoons, passing small portions to friends who hadn't received enough. Lucas watched, his lips parting in disbelief. A girl with bare feet noticed him, smiled, and offered him a piece of her sweet bread. It was an innocent gesture, but in that moment, something cracked inside Lucas. He had come to study Filipino education systems, expecting to witness hardship, scarcity, and resignation. Instead, he saw joy, generosity, and a quiet dignity that seemed impossible against the backdrop of worn floors and peeling paint. A single thought echoed in his mind. Maybe I've been wrong all along. And then it happened. One small act, one moment, that made Lucas realize he had misunderstood not just the children, but an entire nation. A moment so simple yet so powerful that it would haunt him forever. Lucas was 24, a recent university graduate from Europe, curious, analytical, and accustomed to structured, orderly life. He had grown up in a city of glass buildings, predictable routines, and the quiet hum of efficiency. To him, wealth was measured by neatness, comfort, and possession. Anything else was, in his mind, a deficit. The Philippines, he thought, was different. He had read reports, scrolled through articles, and watched documentaries that painted a bleak picture. Slums, typhoons, street vendors struggling to survive. He arrived in Manila with a polite mixture of curiosity and caution, ready to witness poverty firsthand. Yet as Lucas traveled south, leaving the high-rise skyline behind, he discovered layers of life that no report had captured. Quezon province was a tangle of winding roads, coconut trees swaying against a canvas of clouds, and humble villages clinging to hillsides. Life here moved at its own rhythm, slow, vibrant, messy, and profoundly human. He met families who lived in nipa huts with walls patched from tarpaulin, roofs of corrugated metal, and gardens that barely fed them. Children ran barefoot, dogs slept in the sun, and old women tended chickens with wrinkled hands that spoke of decades of labor. Yet despite the hardships, Lucas noticed something curious. There was laughter everywhere. Children sang as they walked to school. Vendors greeted neighbors warmly. Even in scarcity, there was abundance, not of material goods, but of generosity, creativity, and care. He met Aling Rosa, a school principal in her 50s. Her office was nothing more than a desk, a few chairs, and stacks of papers tied with string. Yet when she spoke, her voice carried pride and a deep understanding of her students' lives. "These children," she told him, "they may not have much, but they give more than you think. You'll see soon enough." Lucas nodded politely, but he wasn't prepared for what soon enough would mean. It started with small surprises. Children insisted he sit beside them during recess. A boy handed him a notebook saying, "You can try writing too, sir." A group of girls shared their homemade snacks. Each gesture challenged Lucas's assumptions, but he still measured everything through the lens of scarcity. He had come looking for poverty, and yet every encounter whispered something he wasn't ready to admit. Wealth isn't always counted in money. The tension built slowly. Lucas felt like an intruder in this vibrant, chaotic world. He couldn't help but compare it with Europe. The clean streets, quiet classrooms, strict schedules. Here, children screamed and played, teachers shouted over the din, and lessons sometimes took place under trees when classrooms were overcrowded. One morning, Lucas observed a group of students huddled in the school courtyard. They were preparing for a small cultural presentation, a dance and song performance for the town's fiesta. Their costumes were handmade, scraps of fabric stitched together, paint applied by fingers rather than brushes. He raised an eyebrow. This is poverty, he thought. They don't have the resources, they can't possibly perform well. But then the music started. Wooden sticks tapped rhythmically, voices rose in harmony, and the children's movements, though unpolished, radiated confidence and joy. The crowd of parents cheered, eyes sparkled. Laughter and pride filled the air. Lucas felt a knot in his chest. Something inside him resisted this beauty. How could these children, so poor, be so alive, so free, so rich in spirit? Days later, a misunderstanding nearly broke him. He tried to pay a small fee to a family hosting him during a community event. The grandmother refused, waving him off with a laugh. "Eat. Share. You are welcome here," she said. Lucas, frustrated and embarrassed, muttered, "I should at least give something. I can't just take." "You already give just by being here," she said, smiling. Every interaction tugged at his beliefs. He wanted to leave, to retreat to the safety of his preconceptions, but something about the warmth, the laughter, the generosity kept him anchored. And then one afternoon the turning point arrived. A typhoon had swept through the province days earlier. The community was exhausted, homes were damaged, crops destroyed, waterlogged streets smelled of mud and rot. Yet, as Lucas walked through the village, he saw something he couldn't understand. Neighbors helping neighbors, sharing whatever food remained, repairing houses together, children distributing relief packages to elders. The scale of generosity, the sheer instinct to care for one another despite personal loss, left him breathless. He realized he had been looking at the wrong kind of poverty. He had equated material scarcity with lack of value, forgetting that human wealth can exist in courage, kindness, and connection. But Lucas was not ready yet. He needed the final moment. A single, piercing scene that would shatter all remaining doubts. That moment was coming, and it would leave him silent, humbled, and transformed. It was late afternoon when Lucas found himself walking along a narrow path leading to the riverside. The sun was low, painting the sky in streaks of orange and crimson. The typhoon had left the river swollen and furious, yet the villagers moved calmly, almost rhythmically, as if they were part of the storm itself. A small crowd had gathered at the riverbank. Lucas noticed a boy, perhaps 8 years old, clinging to a battered wooden raft. The boy's younger sister sat trembling nearby, her small hands clutching a wet blanket. A mother's cries cut through the air, panic lacing every syllable. Without hesitation, adults waded into the murky waters. They were not equipped with life jackets, not wearing boots, not even gloves. Their hands were bare, bodies straining against the current, eyes locked on the children. Every movement was careful, precise, and fearless. Lucas froze, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. One man slipped on the slick mud and was almost carried downstream. Another caught him, steadying both himself and the boy. Mothers shouted encouragement, not fear, as they passed blankets and towels to the rescued children. When the boy finally reached the safety of the bank, the crowd erupted, not in chaos, but in jubilant laughter, clapping, and tears. No one asked for payment, no one boasted, no one left anyone behind. They were simply together. Lucas's knees weakened. He felt the weight of every assumption he had carried across continents, the belief that poverty meant weakness, that scarcity meant despair. He had thought the measure of a society was in its material wealth, but here, at the riverbank, he realized the measure was in its heart. The moment crystallized when the little girl, shivering but unharmed, ran to her rescuers and offered each of them a small piece of sticky rice wrapped in banana leaf. She had nothing, and yet she gave everything she could. Lucas's breath caught. The simplicity of the gesture, the raw human generosity, spoke louder than any textbook or news report ever could. And in that silence, Lucas understood something profound. He had been wrong, completely, utterly, beautifully wrong. Filipinos were not poor, not in spirit, not in courage, not in humanity. Their wealth could not be counted in pesos or euros, but in resilience, warmth, and an unshakable sense of community. Tears blurred his vision as he whispered to himself, "I have been blind, and now I see." The days that followed were quieter, slower. Lucas moved through the barangay with new eyes, noticing subtleties he had overlooked before. A grandmother teaching children to weave baskets from palm leaves, her hands nimble despite arthritis. Street vendors laughing with customers, offering extra treats without asking for money. Students tutoring younger siblings after class, sharing notebooks and pencils with no expectation of return. He joined them in small ways, helping carry water, assisting in the cleanup, learning Tagalog phrases to better communicate. And in return, he was not treated as a foreigner observing a spectacle, but as a participant, a temporary member of a family larger than any he had known in Europe. One evening, as the sky turned violet, Lucas sat by the edge of the village playground. Children were playing, their laughter echoing across the fields. A girl approached him holding a tattered ball. "Play with us, sir," she said. He smiled, kneeling to join them. For the first time in weeks, he felt something he had rarely experienced in structured classrooms, lecture halls, or city streets: belonging. Lucas's internal conflict had dissolved. The tension between expectation and reality had been replaced by understanding. He realized that his journey was not about documenting poverty, but about witnessing human wealth in its purest form. A richness measured not in money, but in kindness, courage, and love. Before leaving the village, he visited the school once more. Aling Rosa greeted him warmly, her eyes twinkling with the wisdom of someone who had known generations of children. "Will you tell the world what you saw?" she asked softly. Lucas nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. "I will," he said, "and I will never forget." Lucas returned to Europe with countless photographs, notes, and recordings. But the most valuable lesson could not be captured on paper or camera. It was the understanding that wealth exists in ways that cannot be quantified, in compassion, in courage, in the willingness to share when one has little. He thought often of the boy at the river, the little girl offering sticky rice, and the community that had risked everything for one another. He realized that what he had called poverty was often mistaken for humility, for resilience, for a strength that thrives where material resources are scarce, but hearts are full. In the Philippines, he learned that being poor is not a measure of value, but a challenge met with creativity, generosity, and hope. He understood that the Filipino spirit is built on bayanihan, the practice of working together, helping one another without expectation, and celebrating life even amidst adversity. Lucas carried this lesson everywhere he went, a quiet reminder that the world is not measured by money, but by the courage to give, the strength to endure, and the willingness to open one's heart. He often thought about that rainy afternoon by the river, when a small act of bravery silenced all his prejudices. It was a moment he would never forget, a moment that taught him that true wealth is measured not by what we have, but by what we give and how deeply we care. And perhaps, he realized, this is the most important lesson the world can learn from the Philippines, that generosity, empathy, and human connection are priceless treasures, far richer than anything money can buy. Because in a world that often measures value by possessions, the Filipinos he met showed him a truth that was impossible to ignore. The poorest can be the richest, and the simplest act can reveal the deepest humanity. Lucas left the Philippines transformed, not with souvenirs or photos, but with a heart forever expanded by a generosity that could not be calculated, only felt. And somewhere in the quiet of his memory, he whispered a promise. "I will honor what I have seen. I will share it. I will never mistake poverty for emptiness again." Sometimes the smallest stories reveal the biggest truths and remind us how deeply connected we all are. If you wish to walk with us through more moments like this, stories of people, courage and quiet humanity. You're welcome to stay. In our Filipino way, there is always space for one more in the circle, another heart to listen, another traveler to share the journey. So if this story touched something in you, let it be a beginning, not an ending.